Springfield's Talk 1041 and a good Wednesday morning, everyone. My name is Nick Reed, couple days away from another Heroes Breakfast. A huge welcome to Warriors Journey, new partners. With the station, the morning show, and Heroes Breakfast, along with Delta Roofing and Air Services, heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical, and, of course, Scramblers. So if you are a veteran, this Friday, come out and join us as we broadcast live, 6A to 9A, and then you all going to get yourself some free breakfast. It's interesting watching earlier this week. It began to play out, sort of the countdown clock. Kamala had painted herself into a corner in the maybe one exchange that she actually has had with a reporter since being anointed the nomination, having it handed to her without having to actually run for it. And that was, hey, are you ever going to sit down and do an interview? And she's like, well, I'll talk to my team, and maybe by the end of the month. I want to see if they can work something out for me. And I noticed that on some outlets, they began talking about, that end of the month's coming up. She does not have much time left. And she backed herself into a corner. Gonna do a sit-down interview. Apparently it's going to happen. It's going to be CNN. Many people noting that she is apparently demanding that her emotional support man be there. That is her vice presidential candidate. She is apparently, or her team, one of the two, and maybe together, they've collectively decided that as a woman running for president, she's not quite ready to sit down for a one-on-one interview, so she's bringing a man with her in order to help guide her along, apparently, to be there as an anchor. For whatever reason, he is going to be there. That could, of course, just depending on how that gets handled, could have an impact on how the American people perceive this interview. Will he at some point jump in and try to articulate things for her? This is an interesting thing about this guy that we don't know about his personality. Some people are that way. And it's not even necessarily a flaw. It's just the way that some people are. They will be sitting there and they're with someone that is trying to tell a story. They are trying to give an answer to a question. And if they maybe aren't on point, and we know Kamala Harris, word salad, they feel the need to, jump in and articulate what they believe the answer is. Tell the story a little bit better. I mean, most of us know people like this, or maybe you are a person like this. And if Tim Walz is that sort of guy, how frustrating would that be to sit with Kamala and listen to her try to answer questions? I mean, it would be the worst nightmare if that is your personality. Worst nightmare ever, to put you in a room in a highly significant interview and you have to sit and listen to somebody like Kamala Harris try and articulate thoughts, try to give answers to questions that are going to make sense and be relatively easily digestible by the public at large, but to not jump in. Well, if he does, is he going to be mansplaining? Is it going to make Kamala look weak? Like here, she can't even sit down and have an interview without a man there in order to jump in and save her. Will the media note that, or will they redefine that as a new form of masculinity? It's no longer mansplaining whenever a Democrat tells a woman or helps a woman through something or answers a question for a woman. No. That's not mansplaining. This is the new masculinity. Understanding and connecting so strongly and having such a respect for a woman that he understands what she's trying to say. And he's almost acting as an assistant, not someone who's mansplaining, but there to serve her. Watching the media in a scenario like that twist themselves to explain to us why all of a sudden it's good for a woman to need a man to be there to babysit her during a Q&A and to perhaps step in when he feels she's not doing a good enough job. Or will he sit on his hands the whole time? I mean, I got to be honest with you. The fact that her campaign is requiring he be there with her, sitting next to her during this interview, it adds a whole new, perhaps entertaining component to it. It does also remind me of those criminals or someone who is sitting in prison awaiting an appeal, and they sit down with Dateline, but their attorney is right off to the side or sitting right next to them to make sure that they don't say the wrong thing. They're just there. Odds are they're probably not going to say anything unless they have to step in order to save their client from saying something so colossally stupid that it could alter the course of their future history as either a free citizen or a prisoner. And that presence of Tim Walz there has that same sort of feeling, like the attorney that's there just to make sure his client doesn't say anything stupid. Look at the weather coming up. A few more hot days, maybe some relief coming up this weekend. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 93. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. On Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And Friday we have an 80% chance of showers with a high near 86.
I had Table Rock Handyman at my house this
You
week. Yes,
did?
I did. Fantastic, folks.
What'd you have done?
I had. Okay.
What?
I'll tell this story. No, did I
Okay.
not tell you this?
No.
All right, so this is pretty funny. We needed to get a new refrigerator. The refrigerator that we had was a good brand, very reputable, but had constant issues with, like, it had something to do with the freezing cooling mechanism. So the ice machine didn't always work, and the freezer was never really cold enough. And we had it serviced numerous times, and we just got to where we realized it's not going to happen. So we had decided. So we were pretty particular about what we wanted to replace it, and we finally had. Well, we didn't know exactly what we wanted, but we knew when we saw it we would want it. And I would go over to Cook's Appliance, which is there in the Plaza Shopping
Yeah.
Center across from Plaza Towers. I would go in there about once a week, and so I finally found, and I sent because my wife was at work, and I was like, "Hey, how about this?" And then when she wasn't, she came over and like, "Yeah, we like this one." And so, and they have a lot of dent and ding stuff, and that one had a lot of the dent and ding. You don't even hardly see it at all. But they said, I think there was a little tiny scratch on it. But they said, well, if you want a brand new one, we can do that. And so I said, yeah. Well, at the same time, we wanted to switch from a electric stove to a gas stove. And so, just upgrade that. The stove that we had was with the house. It was one of those glass top electric ones. We've never really cared for it, but it came with the house when we bought it. Now, that was a decade ago. And we found what matched, same brand. And but prior to, had to do a lot of measuring because the stove is in between, built in. Our house was built in the late 70s, so you're talking about pretty sturdy construction and granite countertops. So the stove, had to slide in between two, right? And but the refrigerator only had the countertop come up against one side. The other side was open wall. So we didn't have to worry about the measuring on that. And I at the same time wanted a counter depth one. Our previous one wasn't counter depth, stuck out too far. So there were just a lot of reasons. So I did a lot of measuring. Well, then I also had Foreman Mechanical come over because we needed a new gas line run for the gas stove. There was a gas line in that area of the house because when the house was built, it was built to accommodate a gas dryer. Which we did not use a gas dryer, so it wasn't that difficult just because it was on the other side of that wall. So I've got Foreman Mechanical over at the same time that Cook's Appliance is making the deliveries because I thought, well, I could just do it all in one fell swoop. And I was very nervous about the stove because I'm telling you, I gambled 50-50, and I told, because Cook's Appliance brought the stove in, they're bringing the fridge in, and then Austin with Foreman Mechanical, they are just totally awesome. And I told him, I said, I don't know if that's going to fit. I said, it's 50-50 because I measured it, and on the tape measure, it was exact. Well, when you're talking about something that solid, if you're just 1 millimeter off, it could not go in. And anyhow, it goes in. And Austin, he goes, you can't do that twice. He laughed because it was such an absolute perfect fit.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm all relieved and everything. And then the Cook's Appliance guys are rolling the fridge around and in, and they go, I think this one's taller than your other one, which I never even thought about that because the whole point was to downsize in addition to get one that was properly functioning. And what it had the cab, that was the only part of the cabinets that, aside from being on one side, but that go over it. That you never even put anything in because it's above the refrigerator.
I have those too.
And it was maybe an inch too tall.
Oh, no.
And I was, I said, of all the things I measured and remeasured and measured over and over again. And that was the one thing I just never even thought of. So I mean, right there before they even left, I got on the phone with Table Rock Handyman. And I was like, here's the deal. I left him a message. And he said, well, I'm actually going to be at Scramblers tomorrow. So I took some pics of it. And he's like, oh, yeah, we can do a couple of different things. Anyway, that's why I had him over.
Okay.
And essentially what we did do was just, at this point, we removed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know whether my wife is going to want it gone or want something rebuilt. So he kept the doors that way. He said, well, in a couple weeks, let me know. And if your wife does want a new cabinet up there, I'll keep these doors, and that way I can redo the doors to fit the new cabinet. So the styles all match. So you wouldn't
Yeah.
even know that was anything different. But just, did a fantastic job in and out. And so that's my story. Look at that. Three of our, right there within just one day, three of our incredible partners here. Yeah,
You.
Foreman Mechanical, Cook's Appliance, and Table Rock Handyman. Yeah. So there's the story.
Wow.
There's a whole segment.
Yeah, that's the whole segment.
had
Now we
not.
have to take a break.
Yeah, I had not planned. and anyway, but that ad was running, and so I just mentioned that, and that's what it turned into. Okay, well, and we do need to take a break, but I want to share with you this story about Politico, or that Politico has, regarding the Harris campaign and their effort to find out who would be best for Kamala to sit down and do the interview. Now, of course, this is, once again, a vast difference between someone like Donald Trump and someone like Kamala Harris, and the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign. And I think most of us can agree Trump essentially runs his campaign. I don't think most people believe Kamala Harris runs hers. There are people that are trying to figure out, navigate this for her, tell her, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're not going to do, here's your stance on this. Yes, we know that it's the opposite of your stance before, but this is the new you. Here's how we're going to pitch it, and so forth. And when it comes to interviewing, Trump will just sit down and interview. I mean, anyone. Theo Vaughn, Elon Musk, CNN. Now, he may rip on him while he's doing it, but he'll sit down with anyone. Well, it was like a full court press effort to figure out who would best be helpful for Kamala Harris. And the media was more than helpful in colluding with their campaign in order to help her find the best person to sit down that they felt was going to help the campaign the most. So there's a piece in Politico on this. We'll have some of that. And then CNN commentary as they are talking about the debate. And it's just fascinating. Or not the debate, sorry, the sit-down interview. When Trump does an interview, the interview itself is a non-story because he does them anytime and every time. But the fact that Kamala is going to sit down with a reporter and answer questions that she'll be given ahead of time, that itself becomes news. Like, that is the news story. To the point, CNN, they have commentators on. They've got experts, politicos, that are discussing the implications of the fact and what will she do? What will she say? How will she say it? What does this mean? What does that mean? Just the mere fact that she's sitting down and actually doing what anyone who wants to be president should do without it being an issue whatsoever. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. The reason that Democrats do not want Kamala Harris talking to reporters was demonstrated last week or the week before when she did. And she was asked when she would do a sit-down interview, and she threw out, I'm talking to my team and stuff. And, I'm sure something by the end of the month. Well, the end of the month is coming up. And that is something that many people in the media began to note within the last couple of days. Like, she said she was going to do this. And so this was something that the Democrats felt that they had to force her to do because those comments, evidently. There was a piece in Politico that's all about how they chose, how they were going about picking just the right person, because she can't just sit down and do an interview. By the way, maybe somebody should tell Kamala that when it comes to dealing with world leaders, you don't have this luxury. When you're president of the United States, you don't get to sit and discuss which, we've got an issue with Iran that we need to get on the phone with, or China, or their world leaders are their world leaders. Those are the people you have to deal with. The acrobatics that they go through in order to avoid anyone that might make her look bad, anyone that may be too much of a challenge for her. And this is an outfit that the media, that are her allies. This should be very concerning to every American. So Politico wrote, Harris campaign staff have been asking reporters, some would call this colluding with the media, have been asking reporters who they think Kamala should talk to. Behind the scenes, TV producers from big-name anchors have been calling the campaign to pitch their talent as the person she has to do it with. Harris has had a light schedule since accepting the nomination Thursday in Chicago, and several sources said that she has been using the time not just to prepare for her September 10th debate with Trump, but to map out a media strategy for the next few weeks. Here are some of the questions rattling around about the decision. Who should you send your pitch to? One source of intrigue concerns who in Harris's world will actually be making that decision. Brian Fallon, the campaign senior advisor for communications, is generally considered the key person. But the interview has to be coordinated with Harris's official office, where the communications director is Kirsten Allen. We hear that there are some tensions. Another source with knowledge of the process said that Stephanie Cutter, senior advisor for message and strategy, will have an outsized role as well. Campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon and senior advisor David Plouffe represent another camp. And Maya Harris and Tony West, Harris's sister and brother-in-law, will weigh in with their own views. The political operatives on this list all have long relationships with TV networks and their major talent, but unlike Biden, Harris herself doesn't have the same deep history with the journalists now wooing her. What's the goal? There's been considerable debate in Harris's world about the purpose of timing of the interview. The main narrative in the political press is that Harris needs to do a lengthy, serious interview with a brand-name news anchor who will push her on issues. Harris herself has expressed disagreement with that view, we're told, by two people, telling some Democrats she doesn't need to do big, showy interviews. In October, Harris did a sit-down with Bill Whitaker on 60 Minutes and talked foreign policy. Some of the exchanges were testy, and some Harris aides came away unhappy with the experience. Former Harris comms advisor Ashley Etienne told Playbook she thought Harris should have 3 goals for the interview. The first goal would be to peel back some layers on the vice president and show some new dimensions to her. There are questions about her worldview and ethos and who she is as a leader. The convention, she noted, dealt mostly with her bio, so any interview should aim to add depth in other areas. The second goal would be policy. Quote, to be honest, a big audience for this is the inside the Beltway crowd that really cares about this. So she should substantively draw some distinctions with Biden on some policy issues. Third, show her visually as commander-in-chief. I would want her to do some in her office at the White House, show her on the road, and also take you inside her home at the Naval Observatory. Her pick, sit down with Gayle King on CBS. Now, the first part of this excerpt from the Politico piece was evaluating who would be making this decision. Who would be the decider regarding Harris's sit down with a journalist? Some of the names that were mentioned, recapping: Brian Fallon, Kirsten Allen, Stephanie Cutter, Jen O'Malley Dillon, David Plouffe, Maya Harris, and Tony West. Anyone notice the name Kamala Harris is missing from that list? And Politico is not, most of you recognize, an outfit that is out to make her look bad or inept. They're all in for her. It's a left-wing outfit that is all in on making sure Donald Trump doesn't get elected president. And here they're writing about something as basic as whom it is that she will sit down with and have a conversation. And they list all of these people that are involved in making that decision, and she isn't even one of them. This isn't, oh, these are the people that Kamala listens to. This isn't a list of, these are the people that are going to be giving their assessment and their level of expertise with a varied degree of backgrounds, providing Kamala with information and advice that she will then digest and make a decision based off of her best assessment in evaluating the judgment of those around her. She's not even a part of this. She is the least instrumental person in her campaign. If she were on a daily basis doing interviews, out there answering questions, if she were out there like Donald Trump or J.D. Vance is, you could at least argue, well, sure, she's not in charge of her campaign, but she is out there. She's still instrumental because she's talking, she's answering questions, but she's not even doing that. She is the least consequential person. Deliberately, this is a deliberate effort by her own people to be the least consequential person in her own campaign. All in a pitch to have her run this country. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 93. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And on Friday, we do have an 80% chance of showers with a high near 86.
A reminder, keep your eyes open. Well, even if you don't, you're probably going to see popping up in area stores, maybe some restaurants. Kansas Territory Brewing, specifically perhaps Bradford Light or the Pineapple Life Coach. If you go to Hammond's Field, there's a chance you've already had it as they make their way from Kansas Territory into Missouri. You can purchase and, of course, enjoy Kansas Territory Brewing beer while watching a game at Hammond's Field, and they are working their way again into area stores. You'll probably see some billboards. I think they're going to do that as they introduce themselves to the area. So if you like to try different types of beer, whether you like sort of the more unique stuff like a Pineapple Life Coach or just that standard go-to everyday beer at the end of the day, or maybe in the middle of the day, maybe under your desk while at work. However, I'm not here to judge. Bradford Light may be for you. Kansas Territory Brewing, and you can find them online, kansasterritorybrewingco.com. It was talking about this piece in Politico that was noting all of the effort that the Harris campaign was going to in order to pick the person in her media to do the interview that would be least damaging to her, potentially. And the approach is as if these are, on the brink of World War III parameters to set up some sort of meeting. When the Trump campaign, the Trump administration, rather, was working out an agreement to sit down and have meaningful conversations with North Korea that would result in a less dangerous North Korea, there were all sorts of talks about what will this look like. What are the parameters going to be? This is how the Harris campaign is treating a simple sit-down interview with an ally in the media. And they listed over half a dozen people that would be potentially involved in deciding with whom she would sit down, none of which were Kamala Harris. It's not even considered to be a possibility that she would have any say in this decision. I mean, if she isn't involved or allowed to be involved in deciding which of her allies in the media she's going to do an interview with, do we really think she's going to be allowed to make decisions for this country? One of the other aspects of the Politico article was noting that Tim Walz hasn't really been out there much, and the campaign's decision to potentially not let him out by himself. The reason, according to Politico, that the campaign is not keen on allowing him to go out by himself isn't because they're worried that he might say something kooky about boys and tampons or, lie again about his military record or anything along those lines, but because they're afraid that, well, one, nobody knows where Kamala stands on any of the issues, including him. This is how it reads in Politico. What about Tim? One of the issues that Harris World, notice it's always referenced as Harris World because it's never Harris making the decision. It's the people around her. One of the issues that Harris World is currently working to address is how to deploy running mate Tim Walz in the media. The danger in sending him out to do big solo interviews is that he might not have a full command of where Harris is on every issue. As someone pointed out to us last night, Harris talked about the opportunity economy, but if Walz were asked to define it, would he know how? Well, of course not, because it's meaningless. So here you've got this piece in her Politico, which is an ally of hers, that is fully acknowledging they don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, that even her running mate does not know where she stands on the issues, her own running mate. And so they can't let him out because, I mean, what questions, if it's going to be any sort of meaningful interview, are you going to ask him? And clearly you would ask, well, what do you think that, this administration would do in this instance or that instance? Even if it's not a direct question about where does Kamala Harris stand on the issue of the border? Where does Kamala Harris stand on the issue of electric vehicles? Which, by the way, these are two within the last 24 hours positions that she's now taking an opposite stance on that she has in the past. We'll get to that in a moment. Even if it isn't a direct question along those lines, simply asking, what would this administration do in this situation? Answering that question requires understanding the position of Kamala Harris when it comes to any particular issue. So outside of doing an interview like Vanity Fair did with his dog, which is a true story, Vanity Fair did an interview with his dog. You're not going to be able to do any real meaningful interviews about the direction of the country under this administration when it comes to specific issues without it becoming something that potentially him saying something that is a contradiction to a position that Kamala has taken in the past. So they've crafted all of these landmines around them because of the fact that she has taken every position and somehow at the same time no position on so many different issues. And the way that they've been navigating it thus far is the media knows where all these landmines are and they're carrying them. They have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz holding them on their shoulders as they tiptoe around these landmines for them. And the concern that the Democrats have is what if they have to, they've got all these landmines everywhere, and if you have them sitting down and they have to, especially separately, navigate through them, they could set one of them off. I'm going to play some. So CNN, I think, is it Dana? Did I see that it's Dana Bash from CNN that's doing the interview? I think I saw a number of speculative suggestions, but I want to say that it is CNN that's getting the interview, which would make sense. I mean, any media outlet. They're all allies of her, except, Fox News is just sort of between the two to some degree. CNN discussing the fact that she's doing this interview and what it means, because sadly, with Kamala Harris, the mere fact that she is actually doing an interview has become news. Right, it is Dana Bash, or is it Dana Bash? I hear it. I guess it's
it's
racist
Dana.
not knowing how to pronounce it. Yeah, I've heard people say Dana Bash. Either which way, she was one of the two moderators during the Trump Biden debate, of which I think if you listen to the analysis across quote conservative media, people were pretty generous in their evaluation, or not even, but just people said that CNN actually did a pretty good job, and I thought they did too. They didn't jump in and try to debate for Joe Biden. There were a couple of questions that clearly were framed as, well, Trump is clearly wrong or bad. But overall, CNN did a good job, and I thought that was indicative of people in conservative media that they don't dislike those networks just because those networks are those networks. When they do a good and fair job, they're more than willing. Not only that, but very grateful. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome when it comes to the media. If they aren't completely overtly campaigning for Democrats in even a brief moment, you're so grateful for it. You just want to be friends with them. This is CNN. So the interview is going to be in Atlanta, and it apparently is going to air on CNN tomorrow evening. I don't believe it's live.
It's taped.
Yeah, it's taped. So then you're going to have questions of editing. Oftentimes, these networks will also release an unedited version online. Will CNN do that? Will there be calls for CNN to do that? This is all to be seen, and much of it's going to depend on what is provided to the American people to see. Remember, this is a network that desperately wants Kamala Harris to be elected president, and they also at the same time have an inability to control themselves, and so there's simply going to probably be some bias even in the editing and production of it. But all that said, so CNN is sitting around having this discussion about the implications of Kamala actually talking to people.
Hearing about what this interview may wind up looking like in terms of a platform and in terms of whether she does it with her VP nominee or solo.
I mean, these are the internal debates and conversations going on. Is it going to be live? How long is it? Is it on TV? Is it print? Is it with someone that is a little bit softer, a little bit friendlier, an ideologically aligned person? And if she does something that's more partisan or more liberal leaning, does the press give her credit for doing that interview? Now, Jamal is right in that there's two different things going on. There's basically, should she answer questions? And I think, as a reporter, I would be biased in saying, yes, she should. But is it a politically smart thing to do? And that's the debate also going on within Democratic Party circles. The fact is that, some of her worst moments as vice president were when she did interviews on camera, that she got a little flustered. She sort of did these roundabouts and answers about immigration or about COVID-19. And so that's the other thing that Democrats are thinking. Can you basically only do a few interviews? Is it strategically sound to just do a few interviews before then in November?
This observation, again, CNN network that wants her to get elected president, noting that some of her worst moments as vice president was when she was talking, when she was answering questions. When you're president of the United, the stagecraft, aside from the competency of Kamala Harris, aside from the political philosophy, even if she has one, you just knock all that aside. When you look at how her own people are running the campaign, they are running it in a manner in which they micromanage the scenarios that Kamala will be dealing with. They're controlling it all. They are crafting this entire campaign in a manner that does not require her to deal with anything that is unexpected, that is confrontational, They are micromanaging even within a culture of people who want to get her elected because they are so fearful of her inability to deal with something off the cuff or in an unexpected manner. We're talking about somebody that is potentially going to be the president of the United States of America, in which every day is nothing but the unexpected. And the implications aren't simply losing poll numbers or base support in a swing state. We're talking about countries that have nuclear weapons that she will be expected at times to be dealing with. We are talking about dealing with countries like China, Russia, Iran, which during the Biden administration, they've run all over him. And they, other than when Trump was president, they've run over Republicans and Democrats. The Bushes, they oftentimes were calling the shots, particularly with North Korea. It's not so much a hard and fast line between Republicans and Democrats, but the elite way of thinking in Washington, D.C. Trump, of course, was the exception. But the idea that someone that is having a bubble built around them by her own people because of their recognition that they fear she is incapable of dealing with anything that isn't predetermined or micromanaged for her, to put her in a position of being president of the United States where, 2 a.m., we're getting reports that the missiles have been launched. Talking about people's lives. Talking about countries, dealing with countries south of the border who not only want, but have been actively pumping their illegals into this country. Does anyone really believe she's going to be able to take them on if she can't take on people in her own media? If anything else, just just that alone should be a massive, massive warning. It pains me to say this, but if this country does choose her to be president, we deserve what we get. We really will deserve it. Because we cannot tell ourselves, gee whiz, we had no idea. Whether it's a terrorist attack, it is a full-blown attack from a country like North Korea or Iran, we will be inviting that. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. If you are an owner or have been an owner of an RV, you understand the following in the context of full spectrum of repairs: HVAC, plumbing, electrical, water damage, slide outs, appliances, roof conditioning, wheel bearing, brake adjustments, battery inspection, propane safety check, hitches, screen door protectors, entry steps, backup cameras, patio mats even. Now, this may seem overwhelming. Perhaps if you've never had an RV, you thought, well, I thought that sounded pretty cool, but that's a lot. It isn't a lot when you have Wilder RV as your ally, which all of you can. They're in Clinton, Missouri, just over an hour north on 13. They can take care of all of that for you, and they have free on-site sewer dump and offer propane bottle fill. So you don't have to worry about all that. That's the great thing about allying with Wilder RV for all of your RV needs, whether it's a purchase or that routine maintenance. They can be your one-stop place for it all. Wilder RV, Clinton, Missouri, and at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Wow, what a great, this is a text message from the Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. We should all be concerned that they didn't try to hide Biden this much. Talking about the efforts they're going to keep Kamala Harris away from the media. And the fact that even Biden, they did not go to this extent, what does that tell us? Given what we know that they knew about Biden, and the fact that they seem more concerned about Kamala speaking to the press than they did Biden, that is a very astute observation. News in 60 seconds. I'm going to be interested to see, although I suspect I know how. I'm interested to see how accurate my assessment is of how the media is going to try and defend Kamala's need to have Tim Walz there with her for her interview instead of just having a solo interview. Because this is something that already has been noted. He's being referred to on social media already. So if you missed the announcement, she has agreed to do a sit-down interview with CNN, but he has to be there with her. And I think Megyn Kelly tweeted out, referencing him, her emotional support governor. And people, particularly, look, was it Katie Pavlich of townhall.com? I may actually have some of these
I
pinned in
think
front
that
of me.
the media is just going to paint him as just such a super supportive
Oh, yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Like, look at how awesome and amazing he is. He's willing to take a back seat to a woman. And now, look, he wants to sit there and just listen to her. Yeah, that's how they're going to paint it.
And let me tell you what else they're going to do. They will paint anyone who has the very conversation that we're having as misogynistic to suggest that she needs him there.
Yeah.
So they're going to try and turn it around. That how dare you make this observation? How dare you question this? You are a misogynist. You are anti-woman for thinking, oh, of course, Trump supporters. This is part of the problem with toxic masculinity today, that Kamala can't have Tim Walz sitting next to her without you thinking that she needs it somehow. Well, why does she? Why is she incapable of sitting down and having a solo interview? Just one as the presidential candidate. I think Katie Pavlich had posted, she's editor of townhall.com, something along the lines of, here she wants to be president of the United States and she cannot do an interview without a man. And in the context of first woman president, I think that is even what makes it a more, I don't know, it's just louder in the room, in the narrative, that here you want to be the first woman president and your first sit-down interview, you got to have a man there with you. And even if, just from a perceptual standpoint, it has nothing to do with, quote, needing a man, you still would think that you would want to really project the image that you wouldn't want to even have that be a question, right? That you would definitely do what every other candidate for president has ever done, and they sit down one-on-one interviews. They don't have somebody there with them. Now, if they're asked about it, of course, well, we're a team, and we're going to, all of this claptrap. But I think the average American is going to know. So I do believe, though, that to Sarah's point, if the media does run interference for her, they are going to, one, paint this as, they'll also say, this is what scares Republicans, a man who's willing to sit and support a woman.
Well,
that this challenges their view of masculinity.
If they're going to paint it as, oh, they're just being a team, look at how well they work together, do you think that if Tim does an interview, do you think Kamala's going to go to that and just kind of sit
right.
there?
Yeah, good point. And there's a couple of things. Number one, it doesn't have anything to do with gender. It has to do with she's running for president of the United States. Why is she incapable, whether it's a man, a woman, a little person, whatever sitting next to her? Why is that something that is a condition for her to do this? But secondly, when it does come to, and this is the point that I think a lot of conservatives are making, that on one hand, the liberals set up this entire construct, where they coin these terms like mansplaining, where even if a man is just trying to be helpful, like a man can't even be in a room and, if there happens to be a woman and she, can't figure something out, like, oh, here, I know how to do that. Let me show you. Oh, that's mansplaining. Like the mere fact that a man is in the room offering help is something that the left has created a term in order to denigrate. So they want to create this world on one hand, in which men are not even supposed to give a hint of help towards a woman because that's toxic. But then they will defend a scenario in which Kamala Harris has a man sitting next to her for an interview. And, of course, beyond that, criticize anyone who notes the contradiction. All of a sudden, you will be a misogynist. Springfield's Talk 1041 got ourselves a news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 93. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And on Friday we do have an 80% chance of showers with a high near 86.
Two texts, Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line. It seems Kamala's entire political career has been the result of a man. Yeah. Well, that is true. Whether it was Willie Brown when she was his side piece or Joe Biden picking her as VP. I mean, her entire career. Willie Brown handpicked her and anointed her to be the district attorney. He was the kingmaker. He lived in an area in which whomever he told voters to support, that's who they support. And she was his side piece, and he fully admits that. That's how her career started, and getting into the White House. This is part of the problem I also have when it comes to if we are going to really look at and evaluate the first woman president. Can it not be a woman who has accomplished things on her own right, on her own accord, instead of every single career advancement being because of a man? Is that really what we want to have as the first female president? Did I hear correctly, another text, that Cackling Kamala Tampax Tim interview will be pre-taped? Yeah, that's my understanding. And then, so I imagine that is the only way that they would agree to an interview. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Traffic update. last 48 hours, I suppose, there are two new issues that Kamala is now sounding or trying to sound like Donald Trump. And this, on one hand, I understand that people who are going to vote Kamala Harris because they're told to, it makes no difference what she says her position is. And I think that is an acceptance a lot of us have to come to. The fact that the positions that she is switching to now that she's running for president are in line with Donald Trump. But on the other hand, you really want to say to Democrats, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That she is changing her positions to Donald Trump positions. That is an acknowledgement of something, isn't it? Kamala Harris used to think border wall was un-American. Now she supports a wall. Supports a wall. How long have pro-border enforcement supporters been told by Democrats how horrible a wall is? How many times, whenever Americans said we need a wall, were we told walls don't work? Her own running mate, Tim Walz, in an interview as governor of Minnesota, when asked about Donald Trump's wall proposal, said, if the wall's 13 foot high, I'm going to start manufacturing 14-foot ladders. Now, incidentally, a lot of people believed by that he meant to help illegals get in here. But what his larger point was that a wall's irrelevant because people can crawl over them. That was his ultimate point, that a wall does not do any good. So we have been told everything by the Democrats and the media that walls are irrelevant, they don't work, and also that's not who we are. How many times do we have that poem from the Statue of Liberty's platform that was written by some kid as part of a contest, thrown in our faces, give me your huddled masses? How many times did we hear, quote, that's not who we are, from Democrats when it came to a border wall? This is why, for the longest time, pro-border enforcement people have noted the hypocrisy of the fact that these really wealthy liberals who are against a wall and claims walls don't work have security fences around their homes, or anytime they're afraid of Trump supporters, they put up a wall around whatever facility, be it the Capitol or wherever it is, that they want to, keep out certain people. Those of you Democrats that compared Trump to Hitler because, well, Germany was divided by a wall. Do you have no integrity? None? So you really genuinely now support a wall? Because this is where Kamala Harris's campaign is. She's part of an administration that began dismantling the wall. Where was she then? There was a sketch that was done during the Obama years on the Dave Chappelle show. And it played off the fact that whatever Obama stood for, Republicans came out against. And so the whole play was that Dave Chappelle played Obama, figured this out, and so everything that he wanted, he would just kind of do or propose the opposite, because then Republicans would be for it. So if he wanted A, he would say, I'm against A, so that Republicans would say that we're for A, and that's how he got things done. So the whole thing was playing off this stereotype of just doing just the opposite, and it was playing games and so forth. And I can't help but think about that mocking of Republicans, while now Democrats are just were they taking the opposite position of Trump? Was Kamala Harris taking the opposite position on the wall simply because it was a Trump proposal? Why is she now for building a wall? Is this some sort of mind game? What's going on? She's not capable of playing mind games, of course. Daily Caller reporting Harris is now in favor of building a wall after being attacked repeatedly by former President Donald Trump for presiding over an unprecedented surge in illegal immigration and being the border czar. And by the way, this is Axios, an ally of hers. Prior to her second run for the presidency, Harris had called the border wall, quote, un-American, quote, a stupid waste of money, and, quote, Trump's medieval vanity project. Harris now backs a bipartisan border bill proposed in February, which would require hundreds of millions of unspent public dollars to be spent on further construction of the border wall, according to Axios. The office of Republican Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, one of the lawmakers who negotiated the bill, projected the bill would spend $650 million on wall construction, a far cry from the $18 billion that Trump wanted for the border wall in 2018. Kamala Harris, quote, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. How do you... This one is particularly interesting to me because Democrats were so all in as voters against the wall. You know, some of these issues like fracking, while I think a lot of Democrats, they just as voters, we're told fracking's bad, okay. When it comes to illegal immigrants getting free health care, they were against it whenever their party said that they were against it. Now that Democrats are for it, they're like, oh, okay. But so they're very obedient. And it is because, for the most part, they don't genuinely believe in issues. They worship the party. They worship government when their party is in charge. And so whatever their leader says, whether they say it's raining when it's not, or what they could say something one day, this is the light, this is the truth, and the next day, oh, by the way, now it no longer is. And that's fine with them because it isn't about the issue, it's about their leader. But when it comes to the border, they really, really got their supporters emotionally invested in this. And you could sense the anger when their supporters would be on social media equating the border wall to the Berlin Wall, to Nazism, to the antithesis of everything that is compassionate and kind. And so now, watching them fall in line, as Kamala, oh, no, I'm for a border. We need a border, definitely. Next thing you know, she's going to be out there supporting the whipping of migrants by Border Patrol on horseback. Another issue that within the last 24 hours, she's taking an opposite position on. That next, I'm Nick Reed. There's a good question, somewhat rhetorical, I suppose. Who has even heard Kamala actually say that she supports a border? Well, like every issue, she hasn't said anything. This was the point Tom Cotton was making on the issue of making it illegal for people to own health insurance. And he had that back and forth with Jonathan Karl on Sunday. And Tom Cotton noted that that was one of the many issues that she had switched on. And Jonathan Karl's like, no, she's not for that any longer. And Cotton's like, where do you get that from? She's never said that. Cotton noted, you get some article somewhere that notes an anonymous source close to her campaign claims that, but she's never said that. And she hasn't. But that's how they operate. That way, at any given time, they can claim she stands any given way on any position. When it benefits them at the time, they can claim, "Oh, Kamala, yeah, definitely socialized medicine. She's on the record as supporting the elimination, the illegality of people in America owning private health insurance." But then, at any given moment in an interview or before some audience in which it's politically beneficial to say otherwise, they can say, "No, she's not for that. Her campaign has said that she's not for that." Then go back to the other way. Got an audience of left-wingers that want it to be illegal for Americans to own health insurance, and they're Q&Aing and saying, "Well, gosh, we heard that you no longer support that." "Oh no, I've never said that." See, it allows both ways. The border wall. Axios reports, based off interviews with people familiar with. There's a commercial running that shows a border wall 3 different times that is for Kamala Harris. It's a border wall that Trump built. So like every other one of the issues, she hasn't. But that allows the campaign to take a position on both sides. And apparently for some Americans, that's A-OK. A traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 93. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And on Friday, we do have an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 86.
I think next week is some high 70s, even lower 80s.
Ooh, we're getting
I
close to
think
fall. I didn't look that far ahead.
Yeah, I think I saw that yesterday, so maybe it has
It's about
changed.
that.
Maybe it's changed. A1 Custom Car Care. Yeah, fall will be coming. Winter will be coming.
Yeah, Tuesday, 79.
Yeah, see, there we
Okay.
go. Not on purpose. Air conditioning, of course, is something that when we're getting into the fall season, I really try to give you a heads up that you need to have that stuff checked out before it gets real hot. Then you end up, calling A1, and they're going to get you in as quickly as possible. But there are a lot of people that are calling because they're like, oh, I just can't handle it any longer. Or maybe they just turned it on for the first time. Your heat's the same thing. And what a lot of people don't know, particularly, and I know it's like, what are you talking about? It's like 90 degrees right now, but it is going to get into that cold weather, and we're going to be dealing with, before you know it, needing that defrost. And the defrost, your air conditioner, this is something they can explain to you. Your air conditioning system needs to function properly in order for your defrost to work properly, and it has to do with getting moisture out of the air. So if you think, oh, well, my heater works, so my defrost will work. That's not necessarily the case. And when you're talking about a defrost, and I've done it before, I'm not going to lie, shouldn't have, but you get in your car and, it's so cold out and you run the defrost, but you just like, well, I can see out this little hole. I'll drive. It'll be safe. Well, it's not safe. And you can not only put your own life in danger, but others as well. So just think about it, if not today, but maybe as it starts to get a little bit cooler and you start hearing about frost advisories coming up in the next couple of months, don't wait until it's too late and get that appointment with A1 Custom Car Care for all of your defrost, your heater needs, and everything else for your vehicle. Regarding Kamala Harris now taking the Trump stance on the board, it's amazing. Every one of these issues that she has flipped on has gone from an opposite of Trump's stance to the same as Trump's stance, whether it's fracking or no longer being for elimination of private health insurance, no longer being, there's a number of these different issues. The border wall, she now supports building a wall. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, Kamala's in favor of the wall because they're afraid if they get elected, people will be trying to leave the country. So they want to keep those people in so that they don't lose any assets, or any serfs, rather. Could be truth to that. Electric vehicles. As vice president, of course, this is no secret. Harris has been part of Biden's EV mandate, requiring a majority of new cars produced and sold in the U.S. market are EVs or hybrids by 2023. Harris's agenda read, quote, "We will ensure that 50% of all new passenger vehicles sold are zero emission by 2030 and 100% are zero emission by 2035. Now, of course, they're not zero emission. They put out zero emissions while on the road, but building them, constructing them, and then powering them is not zero emission. But that aside, this has been her, obviously, fully embracive of this. Mandating electric vehicles. Well, guess what? Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign now is asserting that she does not support electric vehicle mandates after years of supporting the mandates. According to The Spectator's Amber Duke, Harris' campaign has sent out an email to supporters on Tuesday claiming, quote, Vice President Harris does not support an electric vehicle mandate. Well, of course, it's what, Wednesday? It's a day of the week. You could go out to Kamala Harris supporters and ask them, where does Kamala stand on the issues? And they could be right every time if they just throw out any given answer. Of course, they'd be wrong at the same time. It is somewhat ironic that a campaign that is taking every side of every issue has supporters that can't list where she stands on any side of any issue. These man-on-the-street interviews that are done, not by mainstream media trying to get Kamala elected, but your offbeat media, and they specifically Kamala Harris supporters. Well, which of her policies do you support the most? They can't give answers. This was done at the convention itself, and the answers were, well, it's more about who she is than what her actual policies are. In reality, they could just say, oh, I like she's against fracking. Well, they're right. I mean, at one point. Of course, the downside is that they're always wrong as well. But I suppose I don't know if this is the upside of being a Democrat, being on the left, that no matter what you say, you're always right, but you're always wrong also. It's been this way for some time, and look at the climate. It's been the coldest winter ever. Well, that's global warming. It's been the hottest summer ever. Well, that's global. It's been the warmest winter ever. It's global warming. Everything, no matter what happens. Not enough rain, too much rain. Not enough snow, too much snow. Not enough wind, too much wind. Not enough humidity, too much humidity. Whatever it is, no matter what side it falls on, they're always right. Coming up, Don Lemon dropping some truth bombs on Jen Psaki about voters' opinions of Harris and Donald Trump. Okie dokie, everyone. Don Lemon is on with Jen Psaki, MSNBC. Jen Psaki, among other things, had to apologize to family members of those who unnecessarily lost their lives in Afghanistan, the Abbey Gate bombing, when she, in her book, falsely claimed that Biden never once looked at his watch while accepting the bodies back here into the United States. The family was there. Of course, it was on video. We all saw it. So she is on record as having to apologize for spreading disinformation, which, of course, qualifies her to have her own show on MSNBC. Don Lemon was on there, and she asked Don Lemon. So he went to the Democratic National Convention, and we played some of the audio as he would go and ask people, "What do you think about Who do you like for president? Why do you like this person? What do you think about this and that? And so Jen Psaki had him on just to sort of get a recap of what he was hearing from people across the country.
Was there Harold? Do you have anything to say about her?
Listen, it depends on where you are. We went to a number of different battleground states in Pennsylvania, Ohio. We were in Michigan, Indiana, on our way, obviously, Illinois, on our way to Chicago. And it sort of depended on where you were. Pennsylvania, well, I shouldn't say Pennsylvania, I should say Philadelphia, was a bit more liberal, and the answers to the questions about her and him were quite different. But for the most part, in Pittsburgh or in the Jersey Shore and in Atlantic City, in Ohio especially, many people did not know who she was, right? They weren't familiar with her. So I think she has to reintroduce herself to the public. But for him, I think that they thought that he's better for the economy. And that, again, that he brought money into the community, and that he was on black people's side.
Well, that's certainly not what she was wanting to hear. There's a conflict between what I think most would recognize as, relatively speaking, anecdotal evidence of man-on-the-street interviews versus what some of the polling headlines show. I've mentioned that I am not putting much stock into the polls right now, and don't plan on it until after the first debate, maybe a week or two after the first debate. And I mean that in practice. I see the headlines, and the headlines themselves are contradictory. Kamala Harris surging in swing states. Of course, that doesn't mean surging ahead necessarily. Then you have, well, Trump is up. There was another Kamala gets no post-debate bounce. And so I just like, what? Why even bother? Why bother? But when you get these man-on-the-street interviews, and some of it's Don Lemon, I mean, clearly his point is not to, help Donald Trump. And MSNBC, they haven't done the man-on-the-street interviews as much as, gathered certain demographic of voters to get their thoughts. It never looks good for Harris. And the only people that say that they're supporting Harris, they aren't saying they're supporting Harris. They're saying that they just don't like Trump. And whenever people are asked, well, what do you think about Harris? They don't even know. They don't know where she stands on the issues. They don't know what she's done. Meanwhile, Trump supporters are real straightforward. Now, in fairness, it's not really that difficult to have a reason to support Trump. It was a little more difficult in 2016 when he wasn't somebody running on a track record of being president of the United States. A lot of it was based off what he said he was going to do. And that's always a gamble because, generally speaking, elected officials say one thing, and then it's not uncommon for them to do another. I mean, Kamala Harris, of course, virtually everything that she said she was going to do when she was running for president the first time in 2016, she's saying the opposite today. So we don't know what she's going to do. 2016, a lot of Americans felt as if Trump's different than that. He's going to do what he said. He says he's going to, secure our border, build a wall. He's going to do it. He says he's going to cut taxes. I believe him. He says he's going to, move the embassy to Jerusalem. I believe him. And, he did all these things. And the country, along with the world overall, was better for it. I suppose some people could argue whether the country as a whole was better. I think, obviously, Trump supporters believe that it was better off under Trump. But what most people can't argue with is that, on average, the average individual's life was better, particularly economically speaking. People had more money in terms of real buying power. Food costs less, rent costs less, mortgages cost less, all of those things. So, to be fair, If you are a Trump supporter, it's a hell of a lot easier to explain why than if you are a Kamala Harris supporter, because you're dealing with two completely opposite pools of information from which one can draw. From Trump, it's what he did and how it affected us. For Kamala, her vibe, it isn't even what she said she's going to do any longer, because on the issues that are important to Americans, she's now claiming to side with Trump on these issues. So you can understand why they struggle to give a reason, as opposed to Trump supporters. Then out in California, Gavin Newsom has a big decision before him, as I guarantee you, Gavin Newsom, and I think a lot of Democrats don't necessarily want Kamala Harris to win the presidency. See, they don't really truly, genuinely fear Donald Trump as president in regards to what it's going to do to the country, other than in the context of their power. So they don't believe if Trump gets elected president that all of a sudden people are going to start struggling economically. They know that's not the case, but that's not their concern. You know, they're not worried about the things that matter to the average person going badly. They're worried about them going well. But you got folks like Gavin Newsom, and I suspect that they think if Kamala does get elected president, then even if it's an unmitigated disaster, which I think many of them assume that it probably will be for a number of reasons, in all likelihood, she would run for a second term, which means somebody like Gavin Newsom not only has to wait this time, but he's going to have to wait next time as well. And even if she didn't run, you know, the difficulty of a Democrat running after a Democrat that has done so poorly that she isn't running for re-election, that this puts on hold people like Gavin Newsom and other Democrats who think, listen, fresh start in marketing is what we need. The political decisions he makes are in that context, and now he's facing a bill that California Democrats have passed to give illegal aliens $150,000 home loans with no interest. Just gift it to them. Yeah. Pass the bill in the state Senate that provides up to $150 in home loans for illegal aliens who are first-time home buyers in the state, which means that they have no credit, or they've got no credit score in the context of owning a home. Odds are, if they're here illegally, there is no credit. I mean, how is it that you're going to have any sort of meaningful credit as somebody who's here in the country illegally? There are a lot of implications to this that I think even people who recognize it's a bad idea don't necessarily recognize. We're going to get a traffic update and more on this. Pyramid Roofing Company. Talk and text line 447-KSGF. And don't forget, Friday, just a couple days away, our Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting, powered by 3M Window Film. It will be a hero's breakfast. And so Scramblers, along with Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and our new partners, Warrior's Journey, are going to be providing free breakfast for veterans. That is 6A to 9A as we broadcast live Friday at Scramblers. California Democrats passing a bill in the state Senate that would provide up to $150,000 in home loans for illegal aliens who are first-time home buyers in the state. The bill, AB 1840, passed the Assembly in a different form, will head back there for approval before heading to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk. It was proposed by Assembly member Joaquin Arambula from Fresno, a Democrat. Expands an existing program for first-time home buyers such that applicants, quote, shall not be disqualified solely based on the applicant's immigration status. The bill has already passed the state Senate, moves through so forth. Depending on the borrower's circumstances, loans offered would not require down payments or interest either. Only a premium representing a percentage of the appreciation of the home's value in addition to repayment of the principal. The measure passed along party lines. There were a few Democrats that voted against it. Now, these are people, of course, that are in the country illegally, which means that they're not citizens here, but they're citizens elsewhere, which means that they can take out a loan, and if they don't want to pay it back, so what? They just leave. Or move to another state. Change your name. I mean, they're in the country illegally anyhow. It's not like they're an American that has the watchful eye of the police state on them, tracking every move they make. I mean, hell, this administration has noted we don't know where millions of illegals are. We don't even know where they are, including hundreds of thousands of children. They're more than transparent in the fact that they cannot track these individuals. And now, oh yeah, in California, going to offer them with no down payment, a no interest loan up to $150,000. And then, of course, they can always just go back to their own country if they want. It's not like they gave up citizenship. And then, of course, who pays for this? Now, here's another trick that they play. They say is, well, now, we're saying that they shall not be disqualified solely based on the applicant's immigration status. So let's say that they have some sort of financial history that disqualifies them. The nature of illegal immigrants suggests that you will have a disproportionately high number of illegals that will not have a financial history that affords them the ability to be given a loan. So that allows the government to then go and say, look, illegals disproportionately are being turned down. So then the government comes along and starts threatening lawsuits. And this is how it is that you get them to just hand them out willy-nilly. News in 60 seconds. You know, if you need a home loan, you see and hear of all sorts of places. Heck, some you can just do online. But if you want a great home loan, for your convenience, the place to start is titled IWantAGreatHomeLoan.com. All of your needs local right here, the characters and their team, and just any questions that you may have. The site itself does have some important information. And what I recommend, and they do as well, that even if you maybe you already have done it, you've gotten a letter that says you're good for a certain amount from your financial institution that you've always gotten your loans through, and you've been banking with them since you opened that very first bank account as a teenager. But give them a shot. It doesn't cost you anything, and you may find out, hey, you're great where you are. But you may also find out that just because of the amount of time and effort that they really spend focusing on this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's not one of 8 different services they provide. This is the service. That they may be able to find stuff for you in terms of options and opportunities you may not have been aware of, whether that is getting that first time or third time or 80th time home loan, or maybe it's a refinancing situation. It all starts at IWantAGreatHomeLoan.com, because you do. I want to just, because time ran a bit short before we had news, this $150 home loan for people in the country illegally out in California. And this is something that has passed the Assembly, passed the Senate. It's got to go back to the Assembly. They've got to get on the same page. But in all likelihood, it will pass. It's partisan. Democrats support it. Republicans are against it, though there are some Democrats who have voted against this. And then Gavin Newsom's got to decide what he's going to do with it. Number one, the government should not be in this business anyhow. They're using taxpayer dollars to give loans to people. People who are in this country illegally can leave at any time they want because they have a home in another country in terms of citizenship. It's not like being an American, where if you take out a home loan and you decide you're going to skip out on it, you can get away scot-free. Although that may be something, given the violation of the Supreme Court opinion when it comes to student loans, who knows what Democrats will do next. But you're stuck with that. You're stuck with it, or you're stuck with the repercussions of not paying for the home loans. If you're in this country illegally, by definition, you are not held accountable for your actions. You're rewarded for them. This is a no-brainer. This is free money. If you are in this country illegally, and then if at whatever point you decide, I don't want to pay it back, whatever, so what? What are they going to do to you? Now, the way that it gets positioned is, the legislation says that it, quote, shall not be disqualified, or an applicant shall not be disqualified solely based on the applicant's immigration status. So there are still other factors involved here. That's BS. The reason that is BS is, let's say that there are factors involved that demonstrate, when it comes to loaning people money, the ability or the willingness to pay it back. If you're in this country illegally, odds are you're not going to have a track record that demonstrates that. If you are not taking it upon yourself to be a responsible individual enough to come into this country legally, odds are you are not going to be able to demonstrate a track record, financially speaking, of, I've got 3 credit cards and I pay them off on time, and I got a car loan over here, and I'm doing all these things as somebody that's in this country illegally. So that means disproportionately, because what does the government do? Everything's by category. So when it comes to home loans that are provided, that are granted, they look at how many of them are white, How many of them are male? How many are female? How many are people of color? How many are in the country illegally? And what they're going to see is the number of people that were denied. And when that number for people in the country illegally that applied is higher than a non-illegal, then they start talking about discrimination. And we can't discriminate. We have to make sure that we loan the same percentage of loans to people in this country illegally, that the decline rate is no greater than it is for people who are in this country legally. So all of a sudden, the factors that lead to a lower number of approvals for people in the country illegally no longer can be a factor because it makes the numbers look off. This was part of the problem that led to a large degree with the housing crisis that we had in this country, and that was government finagling things to get people who should not be in homes. Getting people who, according to their own history in regards to finances, otherwise did not qualify to receive a home loan, but the government comes in, you got Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, that are telling these banking institutes, don't worry, we got you covered. Then you weave into that the racial component, and numbers would oftentimes show that here you'd have a lending institution and people of color would get declined at a greater rate. And it wasn't because of their color, but because, particularly depending on the part of the country, if you're in an area that covers a highly concentrated metropolitan area, in other words, a blue county, economically speaking, you have an increased likelihood of people who are not going to be in a position to receive a loan. Well, because of the racial makeup of that certain area, it's also disproportionately a black population. So the numbers would show that the financial institution was denying loans to people who were black at a higher rate than people who were white. Not because they were black, but because, again, economically speaking, and this is just the reality of Democrat-run areas, there is a wide racial gap between the races when it comes to economics. But because of the skin color component, the government comes in and they start threatening financial institutions, saying that you're being racist because you're denying people of color at a higher rate. And so then they start handing out loans to people who have credit scores that demonstrate that they do not have the likelihood of paying them back. The government's involvement in pressuring financial institutions to give loans to people who had demonstrated they cannot be trusted to pay them back, combined with the promise, don't worry, we'll guarantee it, if something goes wrong, we'll cover it, led to a significant number of people who should not have been trusted with home loans getting home loans, and that's what, of course, led to the big collapse. Of course, what was government's response? Point the finger at the financial institutions, start calling them predatory loans. Should have never given those people loans in the first place. It's much like how the government has dealt with inflation. Government creates inflation, and then they point the finger and blame at the people who have to pass that inflation on. The government of California, using taxpayer dollars in order to give non-down payment and no interest loans to illegals, is done for one reason and one reason only. And that is to further encourage illegals to come into this country. The people who claim that they are, we're just trying to figure out the root causes. We've got to figure out the root causes. What causes people to want to come to this country illegally, while at the same time giving them massive incentives to come into this country illegally? Hey, guys, hey, listen, we got law and order in this country. We don't want you coming here illegally. But if you do, we're going to give you $150,000 to put down on a home. You don't even need a down payment. Don't come here illegally. We've got rules and laws. But if you do, you're going to get free education and free health care. It is to incentivize people to come into this country illegally by promising them all of these wonderful free things. You don't do that if you are wanting to stem the tide of people coming into this country illegally. Got to look at the weather coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we will see mostly sunny skies. It's going to be a hot one with a high near 93. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And on Friday, we do have an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 86.
Streaming live, KSGF.com. We are on YouTube as well. You can watch the show. That is sponsored by Springfield Wraps. Washington, D.C. grand jury returned a superseding indictment against former President Donald Trump on Tuesday. 4 charges regarding election interference in the 2020 presidential election. This is all based off the premise that Donald Trump questioned the irregularities in the election, and that was disenfranchising voters. I wanted to share with you a story that I had actually referenced a week ago or sometime in the last week because it's very relevant given that Jack Smith is at it again. And the whole premise for trying to imprison Kamala Harris's political opposition here is that he was interfering in the election by questioning the outcome, at least in some states. And Julie Kelly had written in a piece, Rule of Law for Everyone, right? This is an excerpt from it. Noting that one of the 4 counts in Smith's January 6 related indictment of the former president is 18 U.S. Code 241, conspiracy against rights. That's the right to vote. The statute reads, quote, if 2 or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, they shall be fined under the title or imprisoned not more than 10 years. Smith is once again relying on the vague language of a federal statute to argue that Trump's claims about voting fraud in the 2020 election and plans to delay the certification proceedings on January 6th denied the rights of the 81 million Americans who voted for Biden. Smith's indictment accuses Trump of conspiring to, quote, injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate 1 or more persons in the free exercise and enjoyment of a right and privilege secured to them by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, that is, the right to vote, and to have one's vote counted. In announcing the indictment back in August of 2023, Smith described the conspiracy charges as Trump's attempt to disenfranchise voters. So, the legal rationale being used by Jack Smith to try to imprison Donald Trump is that in questioning the outcome of the election and suggesting that Mike Pence use his authority to send in certain states where there were questions, the electors back to their state legislatures in order to hash things out, that was interfering in a person's right to vote and to have their vote counted. Kelly notes that using that logic, the law should now apply to congressional Democrats, the corporate news media, and White House officials, including Biden himself, for violating the rights of 14 million voters who voted for Biden during the Democratic primary. By every measure argued by Jack Smith, those parties, these are Jack Smith's measures, by the way. I mean, by looking at the way he is defining all of this, all of those parties collectively disenfranchised voters by freezing out potential Democratic primary opponents last spring and officially clinching the nomination in March, only to later succeed in strong-arming Biden out of the race when it was clear that he could not beat Donald Trump. The criminal conspiracy to violate the voting rights of 14 million Americans began shortly after Biden's disastrous debate performance on June 27th. For 3 weeks, Biden, according to sources, vigorously rejected public and private calls for his ouster. One by one, loyal politicians and reporters turned on him. The short-tempered Biden, quote, has been fuming at his Delaware beach house, increasingly resentful of what he sees as an orchestrated campaign to drive him out of the race and bitter towards some of those he once considered close, including his one-time running mate, Barack Obama, the New York Times reported on July 19th. Nonetheless, Biden and his advisors spent the next 48 hours promising that he planned to continue seeking the second term, even announcing plans to return to the campaign trail after a bout with COVID. Then, in that Sunday afternoon surprise, with 107 days before Election Day, Biden quit the race on July 21st. In any other industry or sport, Biden's decision represented nothing less than conceding victory to Donald Trump. After all, Biden did not say he dropped out due to health problems or unexpected issues. He quit because he was going to lose. and take down other Democratic candidates with him in November. His spokesperson at the time portrayed Biden's act as one of selfless courage. Quote, "The president has spoken to his decision to put country above self and unite his party as well as the stake of the moment." But that's not why Biden exited left straight. He got the hook, or stage left. He got the hook. Biden himself told CBS News sycophant Robert Costa on August 7th, "What happened was a number of my Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought that I was going to hurt them in the races, and I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did so-and-so, and I thought it would be a real distraction. Not a distraction, but a humiliation. It was all about party and politics, nothing about country. Further, Pelosi's mob boss tactics also had nothing to do with protecting her friend of 40 years, but a brutal campaign of, quote, securing democracy, as she loves to say. So ruthlessly booted Biden to prevent Trump from winning is what increasingly looked like a landslide victory. Her goal, she added, was simple, that Donald Trump would never set foot in the White House again. Quote, my concern was, this ain't happening. We have to make a decision for this to happen. Quite ironic for a woman who calls the 4-hour disturbance at the Capitol on January 6th a plan by Trump to, quote, overturn the election results. Rather than risk a loss at the polls in November, Pelosi took the losing matter of Joe Biden's candidacy in her own talons and subsequently out of the hands of 14 million Americans. Biden reportedly still steamed about the unprecedented mutiny against him. He and Pelosi have not spoken since he bowed out. Kamala Harris, the installed replacement who did not earn a single vote for president, now is poised to formally accept the party's nominee on Thursday night. This was written last week. Her speech will represent the culmination of an unprecedented criminal conspiracy and a successful one, unlike what happened on January 6th, to steal the Democratic presidential nominee from Joe Biden and deprive millions of voters their chosen candidate. Where is the Department of Justice where we need it? Well, the Department of Justice is the sword and shield of the Democrat Party, so they're doing their job. We talk, understandably, about the justice system in this country and how it is a weapon to be used against political opposition, and that's how it is used. But I think it's important to understand the specifics. And what Jack Smith is trying to imprison Donald Trump for is his claim that Donald Trump interfered in people's vote by questioning. He didn't actually overturn anything, but by questioning the legitimacy of some of the votes counted in a few specific states. And so the Democrats are using that federal code in order to claim that was disenfranchising voters because it interfered with their vote. Well, as RFK Jr. recently noted, as many others have, that has been done there isn't hardly a state in which Democrats have not actively been trying to disenfranchise voters by having their candidates thrown off the ballots. Not to mention the fact that millions and millions and millions of Democrats voted for Joe Biden only to have him forced out. And putting a candidate in place that not a single voter voted for. Now, you tell me, if that federal law is going to apply to someone based off of taking away someone's vote or disenfranchising them, who actually did it? Their claim is that Trump tried to. But in reality, they actually have done it to millions and millions of Americans. And only, unfortunately, in a Democrat-run government, and what the Democrat Party has become in this country, do you have a justice system that is so clearly used to oppress political opposition and to shield political allies? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. We got a traffic update standing by. This is a good time to remind you about our Heroes Breakfast Friday. Going to be kicking off the weekend with free breakfast for veterans thanks to Scramblers, Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and our brand new partner, Warriors Journey, an incredible organization that we're very excited to introduce you to in a more frequent and meaningful way. They've been on with us in the past because of the work that they do, and that's somebody that you're going to hear more of, and hopefully we can help them in our capacity as well. So they are also now making it possible, along with our other folks, to have that free breakfast on Friday at Scramblers for Veterans at 6A to 9A, Scramblers.
Fields Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we will see mostly sunny skies with a high near 93. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 71. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 95. And on Friday, we have an 80% chance of showers with a high near 86. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Now fall, it will be here soon, so now is time to address those home repairs. And one home repair that oftentimes gets overlooked or sometimes neglected is your roof and your gutters. So that's why I want to tell you about Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, if you've noticed that your gutters, they just aren't keeping up, or maybe whenever you pull into your driveway, you notice that your shingles have kind of a high shimmer, that is a sign of granular loss. And those signs are signs that you need to have a professional out. Now, whenever you call the Pyramid team, they'll come out, they will do do a thorough, free roof inspection, and then they are going to work with you to find a solution that is going to be best for you and your home. And then they go above and beyond, from working through the insurance company, making sure that you don't have to sign anything beforehand, from using high-quality products to adding ice and water shield. They're going to get you all taken care of so you can have that peace of mind as we move into the fall season. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out at your home, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. Now you can find more information on the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, I want to spend a few minutes talking about something that isn't, well, it's going to be discouraging, particularly for those who recognize the reality of the Democrats' overt efforts to cheat. It has become very, very clear that the Democrat Party that would campaign on selling their ideas as better for America, that they don't even try that anymore. I mean, they don't try it. When your own supporters cannot articulate your vision for the country, then it is clear you are not trying to get elected based off of what you're going to do for the country. So then what do you campaign on? How do you campaign? Well, the theme is generally, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. We're the saviors, they are the destroyers. We are good, they are bad. They are evil. They are Nazis. They are Hitler. And so, listen, you even hear at times Whoopi Goldberg, an example on The View, in which she has said, I don't care if your food's more expensive. You may gripe about that, but when you wake up and they're putting us in camps, these absurd notions that are based off fear. So the campaign theme is fear. And of course, ironically, however, they say it's all about love and joy, but it's panic and fear. At the same time, you have to cheat. This is why they continue to push efforts to make it easier to cheat. Whether it's ballot harvesting or early voting, they do things and push for us to do things in this country that no other country does. While other countries do everything they can in order to make sure that there's the least amount of room for error in counting votes and in voting, Democrats push for us to have the most amount of room for error. Every additional day, every additional step, every additional place one can vote, every additional way that a person can vote are numerous additional steps in which errors can occur. I mean, you even set aside and forget about the deliberate cheating, just unintentional errors. When it comes to collecting evidence for a crime, there is a very direct evidence chain, right? It is direct here to here. In court, anytime evidence is challenged, it's based off of where did it go, who had it, how many hands touched it. And the more hands that touched it, the more steps there were between A and B, the more doubt is cast upon the legitimacy of that evidence. And that's because every new step is a step in which somebody can either alter the evidence or mistakes can happen. And it's that way with everything, votes being one of those. So there's only one reason that you attempt to increase the likelihood that things can happen accidentally or purposefully that alter the outcome of the election. And that's because you want that to happen. At the same time, and I knew this was coming. I predicted that this was coming. As Trump was encouraging people some time ago, that when it came, and not just Trump, but other Republicans, that we really got to watch this. We got to watch the polls. We got to have poll watchers out there. We have to have people that are out there making sure that other people are not dropping off armfuls of ballots at the drop boxes and so forth. And I believed that the next step would be to essentially criminalize Americans who want to, in their capacity as a citizen, keep a watchful eye for illegal activity. because, of course, it benefits the Democrats, and to scare people into not wanting to do just that. And that is exactly what's happening. Now, it's happening on a number of different fronts, and I want to share with you a couple different stories, but it all comes together. This is not the story. This is not the story. Here it is. Fox News, Texas's ballot harvesting raids, in quotes, lead to outrage in Latino community civil rights group. One of the nation's oldest civil rights organizations plans to seek federal legal action from, of course, Merrick Garland, after Texas officials executed search and seizure warrants related to alleged illegal ballot harvesting ahead of the 2024 election. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, announced that his office's election integrity unit had executed searches in 3 South Texas counties last week as a part of his ongoing probe. Paxton said the unit has been working since 2022 to investigate fraud and illegal ballot harvesting allegations, which led to enough evidence to obtain warrants. So, evidence was gathered. Warrants were legally obtained and executed. However, officials at the organization, the League of United Latin American Citizens, allege that the warrant searches constitute raids and wrongfully targeted elderly longtime volunteers who were engaged in lawful ballot collection. Now, mind you, they are launching this complaint to Merrick Garland, who puts pro-life grandmothers in prison for praying in the Capitol or outside abortion clinics. The LULAC national president, Roman Palomares, said he is hoping to go to Washington to meet with Justice Department officials who handle civil rights cases, alleging that 100% of those targeted were of Latino or minority ethnicity. So let me tell you how this works. And this is how the Democrats on a federal level are going to attempt to negate election integrity laws. They will use, deliberately, people of a protected class, like minorities, to carry out the illegal activities. Then, whenever the evidence is gathered and a legitimate legal search warrant is obtained, like in Texas, and they execute those search warrants, it's going to be a disproportionately high or 100% targeting, quote, minorities. Well, that's because those are the people that the Democrats use in order to carry out the illegal activity. But this allows this very sort of lawsuit. One, it paints Republicans as racist. And two, it allows the Democrats to utilize the Justice Department as the shield and sword of the Democrat Party and to go after whatever state it is for violating civil rights, claiming that they are targeting minorities. See how this works? So not only do they become more overt at stealing elections, they try to make it illegal to stop the stealing of elections. To further that, Just the News has a story. Democrats create a new pact to combat Republican legal challenges. The group said it expects Trump and his team will attempt to undermine confidence in the election before November 5th and then attempt to overturn the election results if they lose. Democratic strategists on Tuesday created a new Super Political Action Committee, PAC, that is devoted to defending the party against Republican legal action regarding the 2024 election. The new group, called Democracy Defenders, will be allowed to raise and spend unlimited amounts of money and is starting with a $10 million budget. The group will also work in coordination with state parties and other allied groups, according to NBC News. The group says it anticipates attacks on the electoral process by former President Donald Trump and his allies. So in other words, anything whatsoever that anyone sees and questions in terms of illegal voting by the Democrats is going to be painted as an insurrection, as Donald Trump casting doubt on the election, trying to overturn elections, and they're going to go after them. And they're going to be presenting their cases to Merrick Garland, who is their ally. The group's chairman, Jim Messina, said, "We're not messing around with this. Too much is on the line. We've seen what Trump is capable of when he loses an election fair and square. We're going to be stepping up and providing resources directly to state parties and allies on the ground to make sure every American can cast their vote with confidence and without interference. Unless, of course, it's a Democrat primary, and then they don't count." Messina previously served as the campaign manager for Barack Obama. And it's all Democrats, because this isn't about supporting state parties. It's about supporting Democrats. And it is about frightening Americans into keeping their mouths shut when Democrats steal elections. This is the exact, I'm telling you, it's as if the Democrats have huddled with Putin and Maduro and the Iranians and every other country, that this is become standard practice. You kick opposition that is any sort of meaningful challenge off the ballots. You try and imprison political opposition, and you instill fear in citizens that if they see something and say something, if that something is against the Democrats, that they could go to prison for it. And in fact, there's a piece, we'll get it up in the Federalist. Garland makes example of J6 protesters to shut up. I've got to take a quick break, and then I'll just read to you a couple of excerpts. And so all of this is part of the full court press to make it easier to cheat, to stop any government state entity from implementing and or enforcing election integrity laws, masquerading it as racism, and to intimidate Americans by threatening to throw them into prison like J6ers if they question or point out any sort of irregularities they see in voting. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Good questions. Good questions. How do we know all the ballot harvest actually voted for Biden? And then second question, and noting it's more of a notation, but I do want to address Michigan and Wisconsin. They're leaving Kennedy on their state ballots. And this is in defiance of Kennedy's own request. So why is that? But first, the question, how do we know all the ballot harvest actually voted for Biden? Well, one, those who actively go door to door and harvest the ballots, they work for Democrat organizations. And that's not a secret or anything. The Democrats have, this has been part of their operation, is to go collect as many votes as possible. So it's not really challenged or questioned. That is just how they have been operating in terms of, quote, get out the votes. Instead of get out the vote, though, it's go get the vote. So they've sort of two-pronged there. But secondly, the fact that Democrats are the ones who push for it and support it. I think it goes without saying, Democrats never, ever, ever support any sort of voting right that gives them a disadvantage. Every voting right, in quotes, that they support They do so because it benefits them. Now, this interesting notation, and I know, like, I think Wisconsin was the latest state. Kennedy himself has said, okay, as he announced, I'm going to take my name off these ballots. Now, these states in which Democrats have say, they're trying to stop him from removing his name from the ballot. In some states specifically. Now, why would they do this? Because he's throwing his support behind Donald Trump in those states. And they know that he is out there encouraging in those states his supporters to support Donald Trump. They also know, though, if those people go to the polls and RFK Jr.'s name is still on the ballot, there is a chance that instead of taking the advice and the recommendation of RFK Jr. and voting for Trump, that they may go ahead and they'll mark RFK Jr. So they know that as long as his name is on the ballot, then there is a chance that will be one less for Trump, even if they understand what's going on and they know what RFK, that it just, is it going to benefit them in any meaningful manner? May not, but it certainly isn't going to hurt. So all of this, whether it's Cornel West, who, by the way, in an interview yesterday said that the Harris people have offered him a job and to pay off all of his campaign debt if he drops out of the race. So once again, a nation and a Justice Department that is going after Donald Trump, claiming that he is disenfranchising voters. You have a candidate that is a third-party candidate claiming that Kamala Harris's people are offering to pay him money to drop out, pay him money to not be an option for voters. Well, that's perfectly legit, though. We'll get this Federalist piece up. I don't have time to go through it, but Garland makes example of J6 protesters as shut-up questioners. And he had a press conference, and he was bragging about how many Trump supporters he put in prison, bragging about imprisoning 1,500 Trump supporters who had questions about the legitimacy of the election in certain states, and warning that he will continue to do so. Now, so the point, and what I've been talking about with these numerous different articles over the past 20 minutes or so, is this multi-pronged approach. And what they are enhancing their approach to is not only cheating, but making Americans afraid that they will go to prison if they call out the cheating. That's what's being done all the way up to the Department of Justice with Merrick Garland.